Kevin, who is calling in from New York. Kevin, what is going on?
Hey, thanks for taking my call. It's really good to talk to you again. Now, I wanted to bring up the subject of evolution for you guys because I have some personal problems with it. Now, I'm going to get right to it. The thing having to do with
before you get into it, Kevin, is there any way you could eliminate some of the background noise? Because we are picking up a little bit of that.
Oh, yes. I apologize for that. Is it any better right now?
Sounds better right now. Yeah. I'm hearing some breathing, though, and some moving around. Are you walking outside? Is there a place you can get to where you can stop for a sec?
Yes, it'll take me a couple minutes, so I apologize for that. Now, having to do with evolution, a great place to start is obviously Charles Darwin, but I wanted to sort of focus on his 1859 book, Origin of Species.
Hey, I'm going to stop you right there, Kevin. I think actually, despite what you might think, I actually think Charles Darwin is not a good place to start because evolution has been happening long before Charles Darwin's time. And we've evolved some of our own ideas about evolution since Charles Darwin's time. So Charles Darwin could have wrote that whole book and everything could have been wrong in it. But the facts that we know about today about evolution, we don't need that book at all to know. It comes from our observations and it comes from experimentations that we've done as well.
That is true, but isn't he sort of the go-to for? I mean, the basis.
Not really.
You can get an entire biology education without picking up a single one of Charles Darwin's writings. Yeah.
Well, even with that said, I still wanted to talk about that book because while many people are already familiar with his work, specifically the 1859 book, Origin of Species.
Well, let me ask. I'm sorry, Kevin, because you're so ready to get to this point, and I understand that. But like, I just want to ask you, like, why does anything in that book have to matter to us right now as what we currently believe? Because again, like, I get it. He had some ideas, and yeah, you could definitely look at some stuff that didn't pan out to be true, and that people don't follow today's. But like, we're not using that as, you know, Charles Darwin's Origin of the Species isn't our Bible. Right, like we're not referencing it for our current understandings of evolution. So why is this book so central to the argument that you have to make to disprove evolution or to, you know, deconstruct evolution?
I just wanted to point out some possible biases that even he had way back then.
Of course, he had biases.
Origin of the Species wasn't the full title of his book. The full title was actually The Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection, or The Preservation of Favored Races in the Struggle of Life.
Yeah. I mean, he definitely had some. I mean, his ideas about race weren't as. I don't think they were as bad as people made it out to be at the time. I think other people, like his cousin, took some things and made it to be even worse. But again, yeah, I get it. There's a lot of people who have taken the ideas of evolution and stuff and use it to build this kind of history of scientific racism, as they call it, which I wish it even wasn't called that because it's not scientific, right? It's pseudoscientific. I just read a book about this recently, and I can't remember the title, but yeah, I mean, there's a whole history of some of the bad ideas that come from this. But again, I have to emphasize this point. Nothing in that book, you could point out every single flaw in The Origin of Species. It's not going to change my mind about evolution being true or not.
All right. Now, even with that, another very small point I wanted to bring up was that, yes or no, one of the bases of that, one of the things that we learned from evolution is that a very long time ago, simple cell organisms mutated to become complex life. Now, the issue I have with that is that mutations itself seem to be a scrambling of information in which it always seems to result in bad things happening. So I don't buy that.
No,
we've mutated things.
That's not true at all. I don't know if you, Kevin, how much have you looked into any modern scientific, biology book on evolution? Because where are you getting the information that mutations always happen and turn into bad things?
Oh.
Well, for an example, I am by no means an expert in this, but for an example, even the topic of how certain cells, certain bacteria, I guess you could say, become drug resistant.
Okay, well, it's not
due to
not what I asked,
information
right?
Through genetic material.
Look, but even Charles Darwin. Did you read Origin of Species? Because like a big thing in his book was like the benefits of some of these mutations. Remember the finches, right? Like the finches had the different beak sizes because they were taking in a different food sources wherever they were at.
Yes.
Right. So like there's
is it
what is the question?
To use the word mutation? Because I mean, isn't the information from geneticists saying that every time a mutation happens, it ends up being a loss of information? That's why some
no,
cells,
not right.
when they take bacteria,
nope.
That is
nope. That's a creationist talking point, right? This argument from talking about the loss of information, you will only see that in young Earth creationist books. You will not see that in any modern scientific literature on the topic of evolution, because that's not really how they talk about evolution. Like again, the kind of mutations and changes they're talking about can be simple or complex, because what we observe in the DNA doesn't necessarily affect what we see in the phenotypes and what we see happening in DNA is affecting other parts of the cells and other parts of the structures that happen. So it's not always going to be a loss. And in fact, when DNA, or a gain, and when DNA and RNA, well, RNA replication first. Yeah, I'm not going to give you a whole science lesson, but like there are happenstances where DNA kind of doubles on itself, and if you want to talk about information, like stuff is gained through these processes all the time. It's not a entirely, I guess, lossful process. I think a great video on this topic that talks about it more, if you're interested, is a YouTube channel called State It Clearly. That kind of goes more into this argument specifically. I'm not a biologist by trade, and again, evolution was always something that never really bothered me too much. I didn't get into the young Earth creationist stuff, but I think Erin could probably tell you a bit about it too, maybe, right?
I mean, learning about how the adaptations, like how there's certain things that we lost, but we gained, and it's not always like this forward progression of better, or worse, depending on how you're looking at it. I do feel like, like you were saying, like it's the language around it. Like that's not actually what a mutation is. It's a small change, or it's a smaller or larger change, but over long periods of time, and it's just whatever is that useful or beneficial for that group at that time. So it can be kind of a lucky mutation if you look at it that way.
Yeah,
it's not always going negatively, obviously.
But I guess my point was, in the process of replication, there can be new amino acids added and stuff, and new I guess information in that sense happens. But again, that's not the language that biologists use for that.
Yes. It's very interesting. I'm going to leave you with one last thing, then I'll conclude my call.
Okay.
This one last thing really made me think. Just the idea of evolution from, which is evolving from something. I heard the theory that this actually may lay the groundwork for believing that we evolved from something to becoming something through the process of evolution. Now, that might be a little vague, but I think that might lead into new age thinkings right there.
Yeah,
trying to say.
I know what you're trying to say. Absolutely. And Erin definitely knows what you're trying to
I was
say.
just gonna say, can you tell me more about that? Like the law of attraction kind of thing?
Well, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kevin, but like the misuse of the language of evolution, of coming from something to beyond something, like there's this kind of talk in New Age communities about how we're evolving to become our higher beings, you know, like we're becoming, you know,
evolving to the fourth dimension any day now.
yeah, this kind of thing. When like evolution is not a straightforward process where every time like a mutation happens, something better happens, right? Like as we discussed, it's just a change in your environment. You know,
we also I can't control what happens next in the next generation, like with what kind of, you know, genetic material I'm passing on to my kids. I can't affect that in any kind of meaningful way just by wishful thinking, or
not currently.
Yeah,
till we get the CRISPR stuff
CRISPR
down pat,
maybe, but as it is right now, I can't you know, focus my energy and kind of will it to happen in any kind of way.
Yeah, it's a limitation of our language to say we came from something to what we are now, because the truth is every time we reproduce, evolution is happening.
Yeah, it's happening right then.
But you know, that's just humans are bad at talking about science sometimes, because we're just,
you know what, it is really hard though to use the language of evolution through a creationist lens, because it really is this idea of like one creature coming from a different creature, when that's not what's going on.
Yeah,
that's not, you'll never hear that at a young Earth event. They will never say that, you know, if you were to look on the whole line of the evolutionary chain, that there would be at one point that you can say like, okay, now we have Homo sapiens sapien. It's that moving target that it's the language problem and the way that they paint the picture. And until you really get out of that bubble and look at how what biologists and, you know, they're actually saying, you need to understand how they explain it, because it's totally different. It's totally different.
Yeah. So it looks like Kevin dropped in the middle of us talking to him, but that's fine. I hope he got something out of it. You know, I feel kind of dumb now, because I'm not up to, it's been a minute since I've looked at evolution stuff and some of the arguments for that.
I'm no scientist. I don't.
But I have like, all my other YouTube friends who are really into it will grill me on it. But like, it's never been my super big expertise, at least in explanations for that kind of stuff, because it was just never a problem for me. It was never like a thing I had to overcome. So I didn't have to study it as hard. But yeah, I don't know. Hopefully that was a sufficient enough explanation for you, and hopefully the resources we were talking about will be useful for you.